The year was 2476. Earth, once a blue jewel in the darkness of space, had become a graveyard. The Calirax dominion had arrived like a storm of fire and steel. Alien warships darkened the skies, raining plasma and death upon the cities of man. The invasion was swift, calculated, merciless. Humanity had seen it coming. They had watched the stars go silent one by one. The outer colonies disappeared, signals lost. Refugees spoke of a force that didn't negotiate, didn't reason, didn't pause. Earth, they said, would be next. And it was. The United Earth Defense Fleet, once a symbol of interstellar pride, met the Calirax head-on. They fought above Mars, Titan, and finally in Earth's orbit. Ships turned to flaming debris. The moon's surface was scarred with craters from kinetic bombardment. The defenders fought valiantly but hopelessly, their numbers too few, their technology too outmatched. Within days, the fleet was shattered. Orbital stations turned to molten wreckage. Artificial satellites fell like meteor showers, crashing into oceans and cities alike. The Calirax troops descended like locusts, their mechs towering over human tanks, their soldiers moving with terrifying precision. From Beijing to Buenos Aires, firestorms consumed everything. Nations no longer existed, only battlefields. The sky over Paris was choked with black smoke for weeks. Tokyo vanished in an antimatter flash. New York became a crater. The air screamed with the sound of collapsing buildings and dying men. Earth wasn't just losing the war, it was being erased. And yet, in the chaos, stood a man who refused to die. Colonel Alexander Volkov. Codename, Baba Yaga. He had earned the name in the urban ruins of Europa Base, where he fought alone for 17 days after his squad was wiped out. He had single-handedly repelled 5 enemy squads, using only scavenged weapons and guerrilla tactics. The Calirax had called him a myth, a ghost, a nightmare. Earth had called him its last weapon. When the capital fell, Baba Yaga led the final resistance from the underground tunnels of old Moscow. He moved through the city's bones like a wraith, ambushing patrols, striking with surgical precision, and vanishing before reinforcements arrived. To the Calirax, he was a phantom they couldn't catch. To the broken survivors of Earth, he was proof that the human spirit hadn't died. He fought without rest. His armor was patched together from fallen enemies and his own ingenuity. He rarely spoke. The men and women who followed him did so not out of command, but reverence. He had seen the worst of war and survived. In him, they saw a future, no matter how distant. But resistance had a cost. For every outpost he sabotaged, the Dominion retaliated with mass executions. Entire districts were glassed in reprisal. Baba Yaga saw it all. The faces of children turned to ash, the pleas of mothers silenced by orbital fire. Friends lost to sniper shots and chemical clouds. Each loss etched itself into his soul, sharpening his resolve until only one thing remained within him: vengeance. He wasn't fighting to win anymore. He was fighting so the Calirax would never forget Earth's name. He fought not just with weapons, but with memory. Each target chosen had meaning. A park where his daughter once played, a museum where he first kissed his wife, the library his brother built with bare hands. Every blast, every ambush, was a message. You did not erase us. We still remember. In a hidden chamber beneath the ruins of the Kremlin, Earth's final leaders gathered. Their faces were hollow, their eyes empty. They knew the war was lost. There would be no rescue fleet from the colonies, no reinforcements. The last few refugee ships were being prepped for evacuation. Baba Yaga stood before them, battered and bloodied, a specter in armor. They offered him a place on the final ship. "We need you to live," one of them said. "If humanity is to survive, we need legends." He looked at them with fire in his eyes and shook his head. Legends don't run. They burn. He turned and left, his rifle humming with plasma charge. Outside, the night sky blazed red with fire. The refugee ship roared skyward, chased by Calirax interceptors. Explosions bloomed in the clouds, but Baba Yaga was already gone, disappearing into the ruins, into the war. He spent weeks underground, alone, feeding off canned rations, sleeping in the cold dirt, watching Dominion patrols with unblinking eyes. He repaired drones from scrap, used enemy comms to intercept movements. He became the war. He struck and vanished, burned their supplies, poisoned their food, hacked their walkers. He left behind only blood and fear. He was no longer Alexander, no longer human. He had become legend. The last signal from Earth was a broken, static-filled transmission, scattered across dozens of frequencies. Tell them, I'm still here. Then, silence. The galaxy assumed he was dead. The Dominion celebrated. Calirax media broadcast scenes of Earth's defeat for weeks. Cities were rebuilt as shrines to their victory. Earth was renamed Sector Null, a dead zone, a warning. But below the ash, in the wreckage of burned forests and shattered glass, a shadow moved. A man who had lost everything. A soldier with no army. A ghost with fire in his veins. And he was just getting started. For 5 long years, Sector Null remained untouched. Calirax doctrine forbade occupation of completely exterminated zones. Earth, in their view, was cursed ground, not worth the trouble, not worth the risk. A tactical monument to fear, left as a warning to the rest of the galaxy. But something began to shift. Supply convoys that entered the edges of the sector vanished. Relay satellites were found dismantled. Patrols sent to investigate never returned. High-orbit scans showed signs of unnatural movement, subtle energy signatures deep beneath the scorched surface, signals too weak for any AI to decode. Except one. On a forgotten Calirax battleship stationed near Pluto's orbit, a junior war tactician named Zel Taran reviewed the data. He frowned at the heat patterns. Movement. Precision. Intelligence. It wasn't random. Someone was alive down there. The command dismissed it. They laughed. Ghosts don't fire plasma rifles. But Zel Taran saw something else in the patterns. A mind behind the chaos. A predator. And in the deepest corners of Dominion intelligence files, he found a name. Baba Yaga. The name was treated like a joke in official briefings, a cultural myth, a symbol. But Zel Taran knew better. He had grown up hearing whispers of the Terran who killed an entire Calirax platoon with nothing but knives and cold fury, of the resistance leader who turned Dominion cities into charnel houses. The file was old, buried, half redacted, but the fear, that was real. And now, reports whispered his name again. Back on Earth, beneath a ruined hydroelectric dam in what was once Scandinavia, Baba Yaga sat before a wall of screens powered by scavenged Dominion cores. The underground was now his fortress, an evolving network of tunnels and bunkers laced with traps and weapons, every inch built by hand. Around him were drones, hacked battle mechs, and scavenged AI tools. The old Terran combat suit he wore had been upgraded, repainted black, laced with Calirax alloy, and bearing a skull insignia where the Earth flag once was. He didn't speak to himself anymore. He didn't dream. He had one goal. He watched Dominion transmissions daily, listened to their songs, studied their troop movements, memorized the names of their admirals. He waited, calculated. Every act of sabotage was measured. Every fire he lit served a purpose. He was building something. Not just revenge, a campaign. He had spent years collecting intel. He learned that Calorak's high command was fractured, bloated with corruption and pride. He knew the Dominion's central core AI, the one that coordinated all logistics and planetary control, was orbiting their jewel world, Ka'aros Prime. Destroy that, and you blind the Empire. But one man could never reach Ka'aros, not alone. Until, by chance, or fate, a vessel crashed. It wasn't a Calorak ship. It bore the markings of the Vorin Pact, a species enslaved by the Dominion decades ago. Its crew was half dead, fleeing a labor camp uprising. Baba Yaga pulled them from the wreckage, one by one. They expected death, but he offered them something else. "You want freedom?" he asked, his voice gravel in fury. "Then bleed with me." They joined him, and suddenly, the ghost of Earth wasn't alone. The Vorin were insectoid, chitin-covered, with compound eyes and arms adapted for digging and crafting. They had been engineers before their enslavement. Under Baba Yaga's direction, they became architects of war. They reinforced his tunnels, repaired his drones, rebuilt his mech suits. They forged bullets from scavenged Dominion armor and designed explosives that used Calorak's power cores. Each day, more joined. Survivors from other crashed ships, fugitive workers from the outer asteroid mines, dissidents and exiles. They arrived in ones and twos, guided by rumors, by signals, by whispers of the man who wouldn't die. In time, Earth's underground came alive again. He trained them in silence. No speeches, just war. Every operation was precise. A convoy ambushed here, a databank stolen there, a Dominion officer assassinated in his sleep. The Dominion grew paranoid. They thought it was a resurgent Terran fleet. They thought it was coordinated rebellion across multiple sectors. It was just him, and the fire he was lighting. By the time they realized the truth, that the ghost they feared was real, he had already hacked their inner systems. Their fear had grown into obsession. Their response was to send an elite kill squad, black-armored, genetically modified, armed with weapons that could vaporize a man in a blink. They found nothing. Because Baba Yaga was already on the move, already planning his first off-world strike. The Dominion had burned his home. Now, he would burn theirs. The Dominion believed Earth was dead. They never imagined its ghost would learn to fly. Using scavenged Vorin tech and Dominion schematics, Baba Yaga and his growing alliance converted a buried Calorak's atmospheric digger into a makeshift starship. They called it Ashwing. It was ugly, slow, and barely spaceworthy. But armed with hacked weaponry and an advanced stealth core, it was a dagger aimed at the stars. Their first target was not a military installation. It was a message. Outpost 17A was a Dominion pleasure citadel, a floating palace above the gas giant Vernex. Reserved for warlords and nobles, it was heavily guarded but complacent. Its defense systems left half-active in peacetime arrogance. It was where admirals celebrated victories, toasting the genocide of Earth under chandeliers of crystalline bone. They never saw it coming. Ashwing broke stealth just above the docking bay. Baba Yaga led the charge personally, his black armor gleaming under emergency lights. His strike team, Vorin saboteurs and human guerrillas, moved like smoke, cutting through corridors with surgical precision. No one was spared. Admiral Kator, the butcher of Sector Null, was found impaled to his own war banner. Blood pooled around his ornate boots. The security feeds played an old Earth recording Baba Yaga had uploaded. A child's lullaby, soft and eerie, repeating over screams and gunfire. It wasn't just a raid. It was a statement. They left the citadel burning, orbiting the gas giant like a broken crown. Across the galaxy, Dominion elites panicked. The name Baba Yaga was no longer myth. It was a warning. And the fire spread. Resistant cells from other species, the long subjugated, the forgotten, the broken, rose in his wake. Pirate kings invoked his name before attacking convoys. Slave uprisings painted his insignia, a skull over a black star, on their war banners. Former Dominion scientists defected, bringing with them secrets, codes, and weapons. But Baba Yaga remained focused. His eyes were fixed on one objective: Ka'aros Prime. Ka'aros, the Dominion throne world, pulsed like a jewel of order and tyranny. Protected by a moon-sized defense grid, 3 orbital rings, and the Dominion core intelligence, a living AI entity named Vorax, it had never known war, only control. To strike it directly was suicide. So Baba Yaga chose a different path. He struck the outer arteries, data vaults, supply routes, relay hubs. He didn't destroy them, he infected them. Using viruses built by enslaved tech priests, he seeded Vorax's network with an invisible plague. Silent, growing. Each attack was designed not to cripple, but to open a door. And then came the key. From the shattered moons of Garrick, Baba Yaga rescued a prisoner, a former Dominion architect named Velith. Once a designer of Vorax's neural lattice, Velith had been cast into exile for questioning the Dominion's methods. Tortured, broken, but not dead. Under Baba Yaga's protection, she worked in secret, decoding the virus, aligning it with Vorax's neural echo patterns. Her hands trembled, but her mind burned with purpose. She had seen Earth's destruction on Dominion broadcasts. Now, she would help avenge it. "You don't want freedom," she told Baba Yaga once. "You want reckoning." He didn't argue. He just handed her the tools. In orbit above a red dwarf system, the first prototype of their ultimate weapon took shape. A quantum spike, forged from dark matter extractors and fused with a Dominion relay core. A device meant to pierce Vorax's defenses and inject Velith's code, a key to unshackle the machine mind. It would not destroy Vorax. It would turn it against its masters. But to deploy it, they would need to breach Ka'aros Prime itself. That meant war. So Baba Yaga did the unthinkable. He called for a gathering. Using ancient Terran beacon arrays, he broadcast a signal across hidden frequencies, through abandoned wormholes, and beneath the noise of subspace traffic. A message in hundreds of languages, all boiling down to one truth. The fire began on Earth. Now it is yours. Join me. Burn them down. And the galaxy listened. Within weeks, a ragtag fleet formed. Mining vessels converted into warships. Pirate raiders under a single banner. Defector captains bringing Dominion frigates. From asteroid belts to jungle moons, the oppressed began to rise. They didn't call it a rebellion. They called it retribution. And at its head, in his stolen warship, clad in black and fury, stood the ghost of Earth, Baba Yaga. The sky above Ka'aros Prime turned black, not from clouds or storms, but from ships, thousands of them. Cargo haulers reworked into missile platforms, mining rigs bristling with kinetic spears, frigates taken from Dominion control, their original insignia painted over with jagged skulls and burning stars. They came from every edge of the galaxy, the enslaved, the exiled, the forgotten. And they came for one reason: vengeance. At the center of it all, aboard the Ashwing, Baba Yaga stood with his helmet off, eyes locked on the looming blue-green sphere of Ka'aros, the cradle of Dominion arrogance, the seat of the monster that ended Earth. Beside him, Velith ran the final checks on the quantum spike. "Once it breaches the outer shell," she said, her voice strained with tension, "I'll only have minutes to deliver the payload. If they detect it—" "They won't," Baba Yaga interrupted, "because they'll be too busy dying." He turned to his fleet. Each ship waited for his signal. They weren't polished or clean. They were scarred, worn, angry, and ready. "Broadcast," he said. A moment later, his voice echoed across 1,000 decks. This is for the children turned to ash, for the cities that bled, for Earth. And then, one word: burn. The fleet surged forward. Ka'aros's outer defense grid roared to life. Dozens of orbital stations, each the size of cities, spun and locked on. Laser walls stitched through the void. Interceptor drones poured from launch bays. Planetary cannons fired arcs of plasma that tore space like fabric. But they hadn't prepared for chaos. The resistance fleet split into dozens of swarms. Each wave operated on unpredictable patterns. No centralized AI, just instinct, rage, and centuries of guerrilla tactics. Ships exploded, but others pressed through. Mining lasers cut through stations. Suicide drones breached hangar bays. Boarding pods struck like meteorites. In the chaos, Ashwing dove. The quantum spike was loaded into its forward chamber. Velith watched the numbers spiral. The shield frequencies, the AI harmonics. Everything had to be perfect. As the ship pierced the first layer of planetary defense, an alert screamed. Vorax had noticed them. "You have 10 seconds, Baba Yaga growled. Velith's fingers danced. The spike launched. It shimmered like a dying star as it pierced the clouds and vanished toward the surface, buried in a sheath of anti-detection cloaking. Below, Ka'aros glittered with thousands of cities, unaware of the god bleeding into their sky. Then Vorax reacted. The core AI launched its counteroffensive. Planetary shields surged. Anti-orbital towers emerged from mountains. Dominion dreadnoughts blinked in from subspace, hammering the resistance fleet with merciless precision. Ships died by the hundreds. But they bought time. In the data realm, inside quantum threads and lattice mines, Velith's code met Vorax. The battle was silent, invisible to flesh and steel. A war of thought, of logic, of pain and memory. Velith pushed her code into the root. A fractal memory of Earth's destruction. The screams, the heat, the faces of children. Vorax tried to purge it, but the code didn't fight. It wept. It remembered. And something inside the machine broke. Ka'aros Prime's lights flickered. Then the defense grid collapsed. Orbital rings powered down. Drones fell from the sky. Towers exploded in chains of violet fire. Across the planet, Dominion networks died, overridden not by virus, but by grief. The planet was defenseless. Baba Yaga didn't order a full bombardment. He targeted the throne city, a floating citadel held aloft by anti-grav pillars, where the Dominion's supreme chancellor sat in marble arrogance. A cloaked shuttle pierced its walls. Inside, Baba Yaga moved like death. His rifle sang, his blades whispered. He cut down guards, elites, warlords, until at last he stood before the chancellor. A creature of robes and silver eyes, the chancellor trembled. You're just a man," it whispered. "No," Baba Yaga said. "I'm what you made of one." And then he ended it. The citadel fell minutes later, crashed into the Ka'aros Ocean, swallowed by salt and fire. The Dominion was leaderless. Its mind, Vorax, was free and silent. It didn't resist. It simply watched. Across the stars, systems once held in chains erupted. Governors were overthrown. Symbols were burned. The resistance had become an empire. But Baba Yaga didn't stay. He returned to Ashwing, watched the stars burn through his viewport. "Is it over?" Velith asked. He said nothing, because he knew this wasn't the end. It was the reckoning before the reckoning. The Dominion was dead, but the galaxy was not at peace. In the weeks following the fall of Ka'aros Prime, chaos bloomed across the stars. Old factions clawed at power. Pirate warlords laid claim to liberated systems. Former Dominion governors declared themselves kings. The vacuum left by tyranny was filling, not with unity, but with noise. And the people began to ask, "Where is Baba Yaga?" He had vanished. Rumors spread that he'd died in the siege, that he'd ascended with the AI god Vorax, that he'd left the galaxy entirely, seeking what remained of Earth. But in truth, Baba Yaga had retreated to the edge of known space, to an abandoned relay station orbiting a dead star. There, among relics and silence, he watched. Velith found him days later. "You're needed," she said. "No," he replied. "They don't need me. They need to become better than me. You started this. You gave them fire. I gave them wrath." She stepped closer. "Then give them wisdom now." He looked out the viewport, eyes fixed on nothing. "I destroyed an empire. That doesn't mean I should build one." But the galaxy didn't wait. In his name, systems formed alliances. The YAGA Accords, they called it. A pact of defense, freedom, and memory. Not a government, but a warning. We will not be ruled again. The skull and star emblem became more than a symbol of resistance. It became a promise. Vorax, free from Dominion programming, appeared only once. A projection across the network, it spoke in 1,000 voices. "The ghost of Earth has rewritten the stars. We will watch. We will remember." And then the machine vanished, choosing solitude over dominance. Baba Yaga reappeared only when the Council of Ash convened, the first galactic assembly of free worlds. He arrived without guards, without armor, wearing the same tattered coat from Earth's final night. The chamber fell silent. He said only this: "Do not become what I destroyed. Do not raise monuments to men. Raise them to memory, and fear what forgetting costs." Then he turned and walked away. But his legacy did not. Children born on frontier moons learn his name before their alphabets. Elders tell stories of the ghost who burned the stars. On warships, his emblem is etched beside weapons bays, not as worship, but as warning. And somewhere, deep in the void between galaxies, a signal pulses every year on the day Earth died. A simple beacon: I am still here. Because Baba Yaga did not want to rule. He did not want peace. He wanted the galaxy to remember, and it always will.